Welcome to the Sleep Story Haven, your peaceful sanctuary where the whispers of ancient forests meet the gentle rhythm of moonlit shores. Here, time slows to the rhythm of your breathing. Worries dissolve like mist, and your mind finds the peace it's been seeking. Each story is crafted to guide you through enchanted landscapes and tranquil moments, designed to quiet your thoughts and prepare your spirit for deep, restorative sleep. So find your most comfortable position, close your eyes, and let tonight's gentle tale carry you to the peaceful dreams that await. Welcome to your sleep story haven. Take a deep breath and let our story begin. The Garden of Unexpected Kindness. A sleep story of random acts of awesome. Chapter 1: The Weary Walker. The evening air carried the scent of honeysuckle and cooling earth as Maya stepped off the bus at the unfamiliar stop. Her shoulders, weighted down by months of endless deadlines and sleepless nights, seemed to exhale along with her as she looked around at the quiet neighborhood street. The moving boxes in her small apartment could wait another day. Tonight, she simply needed to walk, to breathe, to find some corner of peace in a world that had forgotten how to slow down. The street stretched before her like a gentle invitation, lined with old oak trees whose branches formed a canopy of whispered secrets above. Their leaves rustled softly in the warm breeze, creating a symphony of gentle percussion that seemed to match the rhythm of her slowing heartbeat. Each step on the worn sidewalk felt like a small act of rebellion against the frantic pace she'd been keeping. A quiet declaration that this moment belonged to her and her alone. Maya had moved to this neighborhood 3 weeks ago, drawn by its reputation for quiet streets and friendly faces. Though she'd been too busy with work to explore beyond the route between her apartment and the bus stop. Tonight, with no particular destination in mind, she let her feet choose the path. The streetlights cast pools of golden warmth every 30 feet, creating a dotted line of comfort that seemed to lead toward something she couldn't quite name, but deeply needed. As she walked, the tension in her neck began to release, muscle by muscle, like ice melting in spring sunshine. The sounds of the city seemed to fade into a distant hum, replaced by the closer, more intimate sounds of evening settling over the neighborhood. A dog barked playfully in a backyard, followed by the gentle laughter of children being called in for bedtime stories. Somewhere nearby, a television murmured soft conversations through an open window, blending with the whisper of wind through garden leaves. The first thing Maya noticed about this street was how different it felt from the sterile apartment complexes and busy thoroughfares she'd grown accustomed to. Here, front porches held rocking chairs and small tables set with coffee cups forgotten in the peaceful transition from day to night. Garden gates stood slightly ajar, as if inviting passers-by to peek at the treasures within. The very air seemed to move more slowly here, carrying with it the promise of rest and the possibility of belonging. She paused at the corner where the street curved gently to the right, following the natural contours of the land rather than fighting against them. A small sign, weathered but lovingly maintained, read Harmony Lane in flowing script. The name seemed to resonate in her chest. A tuning fork struck against the chaos of her recent months. Maya smiled for the first time in weeks, feeling something tight in her chest begin to loosen. The houses along Harmony Lane were modest, but well-loved, each one unique in its own quiet way. There was a cottage with lavender bushes spilling over a white picket fence, their purple blooms glowing softly in the lamplight. Next to it stood a craftsman bungalow with a wraparound porch, adorned with hanging ferns that swayed gently in the evening breeze. Each home seemed to have its own personality, its own story to tell. Yet they all shared a common thread of peaceful contentment. Maya found herself walking more slowly now, not from fatigue, but from a growing desire to absorb every detail of this unexpected sanctuary. The sidewalk here was older, with small cracks where tree roots had pushed through, creating tiny valleys that held rainwater and encouraged moss to grow in soft, green cushions. These imperfections, rather than detracting from the beauty of the street, seemed to add character and charm, like laugh lines on a beloved face. As she continued her gentle exploration, Maya noticed that many of the front yards seemed to flow seamlessly into one another, creating the impression of one large, communal garden. There were no harsh fence lines or territorial markings, just a gentle transition from one family's roses to another's hostas, from carefully tended vegetable patches to wildflower meadows that seemed to have grown according to their own mysterious wisdom. The sound of her footsteps on the pavement created a steady rhythm, a meditation in motion that helped quiet the endless chatter in her mind. Each step seemed to carry away a small piece of the stress and anxiety that had accumulated like dust in the corners of her soul. With each breath, she felt herself settling deeper into the present moment, into the simple pleasure of being exactly where she was. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves above her, and for a moment, Maya felt as if the entire street were breathing with her, inhaling peace and exhaling the accumulated tensions of the day. The street lamps flickered on as if responding to some internal clock, their warm light creating pools of amber that invited lingering and contemplation. She realized that for the first time in months, she had nowhere urgent to be, no deadline pressing at her consciousness, no phone buzzing with demands for her attention. As she reached the middle of the block, Maya noticed a small bench tucked beneath a particularly magnificent oak tree. The bench was simple but inviting, painted a soft sage green that seemed to blend harmoniously with the surrounding foliage. Someone had placed a small pillow on one end, covered in fabric that depicted sleeping cats in various peaceful poses. The sight of it made her smile, a genuine expression of joy that felt foreign but welcome on her face. She approached the bench slowly, as if it might disappear if she moved too quickly. As she drew closer, she noticed a small plaque mounted on the back of the bench, almost hidden among the climbing roses that had wound their way around the oak's trunk. The plaque read in simple lettering, "For those who need a moment of peace, rest here as long as you need." Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from a deep recognition of exactly what she'd been seeking without knowing it. This bench, this tree, this entire street seemed to exist specifically for people like her people, who had forgotten how to rest, who had lost touch with the simple pleasure of sitting quietly and letting the world continue its gentle rotation around them. She settled onto the bench with a sigh that seemed to come from the very depths of her being. The wood was warm from the day's sun, and the pillow smelled faintly of lavender and fresh air. As she leaned back against the tree, she felt the rough bark through her shirt, a reminder that she was connected to something larger and more enduring than her temporary troubles. From her position on the bench, Maya could see down the entire length of Harmony Lane, taking in the peaceful tableau of evening settling over the neighborhood. Lights were beginning to twinkle on in windows, creating a warm glow that spoke of families gathering around dinner tables, of children being tucked into bed, of couples sharing quiet conversations over cups of tea. The scene filled her with a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. As she sat there, breathing in the evening air and feeling her heartbeat slow to match the gentle rhythm of the street, Maya began to understand that she had stumbled upon something precious and rare. This wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a community, a place where people still remembered how to care for one another, how to create spaces of peace and welcome for strangers and neighbors alike. The evening deepened around her, and with it came a profound sense of gratitude for the series of small decisions that had led her to this moment. The delayed unpacking, the spontaneous decision to walk, the choice to follow an unfamiliar street. Each had been a step toward this perfect moment of rest and discovery. As she prepared to continue her walk, Maya felt something shift inside her, a gentle opening that suggested this evening was only the beginning of something beautiful and transformative. Chapter 2: the first whisper of wonder. The next morning arrived with the gentle persistence of sunlight filtering through Maya's bedroom curtains, coaxing her from the deepest sleep she'd experienced in months. As consciousness slowly returned, she found herself smiling before she even opened her eyes, remembering the peaceful walk from the night before. The memory of Harmony Lane lingered like a sweet dream, filling her with an inexplicable sense of anticipation for the day ahead. After a leisurely breakfast and a few hours of finally unpacking her belongings, Maya found herself drawn once again to the quiet street that had offered her such unexpected solace. The afternoon sun cast everything in a different light, revealing details that had been hidden in the evening shadows. Gardens that had seemed like gentle suggestions in the lamplight now blazed with color and life, each one a masterpiece of careful tending and natural beauty. As she walked, Maya noticed that the street seemed different during the day, alive with a subtle energy that spoke of community and connection. A woman with silver hair and kind eyes was watering her roses, humming softly to herself as she worked. When she noticed Maya approaching, she raised her hand in a gentle wave, her smile as warm as the afternoon sun. "Beautiful day for a walk," the woman called out, her voice carrying the musical quality of someone who had learned to find joy in simple observations. "I'm a leaner. I don't think we've met." Maya felt a flutter of nervous excitement as she approached the garden gate. Social interactions had felt increasingly difficult over the past months, but something about Aliner's presence made conversation feel as natural as breathing. "I'm Maya. I just moved to the neighborhood a few weeks ago." "How wonderful." Aliner's eyes lit up with genuine pleasure. "Welcome to Harmony Lane. I've been tending this garden for nearly 20 years now, and I still discover something new about it every day. Would you like to see the secret corner? I think you might appreciate it." There was something in Aliner's tone that suggested this was more than a casual invitation. As if she had been waiting for exactly the right person to share her secret with, Maya nodded, feeling drawn by the same mysterious pull that had brought her to this street in the first place. Aliner led her through a narrow path between towering hollyhocks and trailing morning glories, their purple blooms creating a natural archway that seemed to whisper of hidden treasures ahead. The path curved gently to the right, following the natural contours of the garden, and opened into a small clearing that took Maya's breath away. The secret corner was a perfectly circular space, no more than 10 feet across, where the grass grew thick and soft like nature's own carpet. In the center stood a small fountain, its water bubbling up from a stone carved to look like a sleeping cat, the gentle sound creating a constant, soothing melody. Around the fountain, someone had planted night-blooming jasmine and moonflowers, their pale blooms just beginning to open in the afternoon light. "This is where I come when the world feels too loud," Alina explained, settling onto a small stone bench that seemed to have grown from the earth itself. "I call it my peace garden. It has a way of reminding me that there's still magic in the world, even when we forget to look for it." Maya settled beside Alina on the bench, feeling the cool stone against her back and the warm sun on her face. The fountain's gentle bubbling mixed with the distant sound of wind chimes hanging from a nearby tree, creating a symphony of peace that seemed to slow time itself. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the water dance and listening to the secret conversations of the garden. "I have a confession," Alina said eventually, her voice soft with something that might have been mischief. "This fountain wasn't always here. It appeared one morning about 5 years ago, along with a note that said, 'For those who need to remember the sound of peace.' I never found out who put it here, but I've been caring for it ever since." Maya felt a thrill of curiosity mixed with wonder. "Someone just gave you a fountain?" "Oh, my dear, that's just the beginning." Alina's smile held secrets and stories. "This whole neighborhood is full of mysterious kindnesses, people doing beautiful things for each other without taking credit, without expecting anything in return. It's become quite a tradition, actually. We call them whispers of wonder, little gifts that appear when people need them most. As if summoned by their conversation, a small tabby cat appeared from behind a cluster of ferns, moving with the liquid grace of a creature completely at home in this magical space. The cat approached Maya with the confidence of an old friend, rubbing against her legs and purring with a volume that seemed impossible for such a small creature. "That's Harmony," Alina said, reaching down to scratch behind the cat's ears. "She showed up the same day as the fountain, and she's been the unofficial guardian of this space ever since. She has an uncanny ability to appear whenever someone needs comfort." Maya found herself laughing as Harmony settled into her lap, the cat's purr creating a vibration that seemed to resonate through her entire body. The sound was deeply soothing, like a living meditation that helped quiet the persistent anxiety that had been her constant companion for months. "I've been so stressed lately," Maya found herself admitting, surprised by her own openness. "Work has been overwhelming, and I've been feeling so disconnected from everything that used to bring me joy. Last night was the first time in months that I felt truly peaceful." Alina nodded with the understanding of someone who had walked through her own seasons of difficulty. Sometimes we need to step away from our own gardens to remember how to tend them. The peace you felt last night, that's always been inside you. Places like this just help us remember how to access it. As they sat together, Maya became aware of other sounds drifting from the surrounding neighborhood. Somewhere nearby, children were playing a game that involved a lot of giggling and the gentle bounce of a ball. A dog barked once, then settled into contentment. The sound of a screen door closing was followed by the clink of glasses and the murmur of conversation on a nearby porch. "It sounds like such a peaceful community," Maya observed, feeling a longing she hadn't realized she carried. "I've been living in the city for so long, I'd forgotten what it feels like to be part of something like this." "Community isn't something you find," Alina said gently. "It's something you create, one small kindness at a time. The people on this street have learned that secret. They understand that the way to heal the world is to start with healing the small corner where you live." As the afternoon sun began to slant through the trees, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, Maya felt something shift inside her. The tight knot of anxiety that had lived in her chest for months began to loosen, replaced by something warmer and more expansive. She realized that she had been holding her breath for a very long time, and now, finally, she was learning to breathe again. Alina stood and began to gather her watering supplies, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who had learned that the best things in life couldn't be rushed. "Come back anytime you need to remember," she said. "The garden will always be here, and so will the peace you found in it." As Maya made her way back to the main path, Harmony trotting beside her like a small, purring escort, she felt as if she were carrying a piece of the secret garden with her. The fountain's gentle song seemed to have embedded itself in her memory, a melody she could call upon whenever the world became too loud or too harsh. Walking home through the golden afternoon light, Maya found herself noticing details she had missed before. The way the shadows fell across the sidewalk created patterns that looked like lace. The sound of her footsteps on the pavement had become a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Even the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other felt like a form of meditation, a way of moving through the world with intention and grace. That evening, as she prepared for bed, Maya found herself looking forward to sleep in a way she hadn't in months. The peace she had discovered in Alina's secret garden seemed to have followed her home, creating a sense of safety and contentment that made rest feel not just possible, but inevitable. As she drifted off to sleep, she could still hear the fountain's gentle song, still feel Harmony's purr vibrating through her chest, still smell the jasmine and moonflowers that bloomed in the darkness of the secret corner. Chapter 3: The Midnight Gardeners. 3 nights later, Maya woke to the sound of gentle voices drifting through her open bedroom window. The clock on her nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m., and for a moment she lay still, wondering if she had dreamed the sounds. But there it was again, the soft murmur of conversation, punctuated by the occasional quiet laugh and the whisper of footsteps on grass. Curiosity overcoming sleepiness, Maya slipped from her bed and padded to the window, careful not to let her feet creak on the hardwood floor. What she saw in the pale moonlight made her catch her breath in wonder and delight. The front yard of the house across the street was alive with shadowy figures moving with purposeful quiet through the garden. At least 6 people, maybe more, were working together in perfect harmony, their movements choreographed by some invisible conductor. One person was carefully planting what looked like small flowering bushes along the walkway, while another was installing a series of small solar lights that cast a warm, golden glow over the newly emerging garden. Maya watched, mesmerized, as the midnight gardeners worked their magic. A woman with long, flowing hair was creating a border of white stones around a flower bed, each stone placed with the careful attention of someone creating a work of art. Near the porch, a man was assembling what appeared to be a small wooden bench, his movements sure and practiced despite the dim light. The entire scene had the quality of a beautiful dream, as if she were watching garden fairies at work under the protection of the stars. The workers moved with an almost supernatural quiet, communicating through gestures and whispered words that seemed to carry on the night air like music. Even their tools seemed to make less noise than should have been possible, as if the very night were conspiring to keep their secret. Maya found herself holding her breath, afraid that any movement might break the spell and send the magical workers disappearing into the darkness. But as she watched, she began to recognize some of the figures. There was Alina, her silver hair caught up in a practical bun, carefully tending to what looked like a small herb garden near the kitchen window. Another figure looked familiar too, the mailman who had greeted her cheerfully just that morning, now wielding a small rake with the skill of a master gardener. As the work progressed, Maya began to understand the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just gardening, it was a complete transformation. The small, tired-looking yard was being turned into a sanctuary, a place of beauty and peace that rivaled Alina's secret garden. Bird baths were appearing as if by magic, along with small trellises that would soon support climbing roses and morning glories. The centerpiece of the transformation was a small meditation area being created near the front porch. The midnight gardeners had brought in several large stones, arranging them in a perfect circle around what would become a small fire pit. Someone had already begun filling the circle with smooth river rocks, creating a foundation that would allow for safe, small fires on cool evenings, Maya watched in amazement as one of the workers, a young woman with curly hair tied back with what looked like a silk scarf, began hanging wind chimes from the porch eaves. The chimes were clearly handmade, each one slightly different in size and tone, creating a symphony of gentle sounds that seemed to bless the entire undertaking. The most magical moment came when the workers began to plant what appeared to be a small grove of lavender bushes near the new meditation circle. As they worked, the night air began to fill with the distinctive, calming scent of lavender, creating an aromatic blessing that seemed to sanctify the entire space. Maya found herself taking deeper breaths, feeling the lavender's natural calming properties beginning to work their magic even from her position at the window. As the hours passed, Maya found herself deeply moved by the care and attention being lavished on this single front yard. Each plant was placed with obvious thought and intention, each element of the design carefully considered to create maximum beauty and tranquility. But more than that, she was touched by the obvious love that motivated the work. These people weren't being paid for their labor. They were giving their time and energy as a gift, transforming a neighbor's space into something beautiful for the simple joy of creating beauty. Around 4 a.m., as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, the midnight gardeners began to pack up their tools. They moved with the same quiet efficiency they had shown throughout the night, leaving no trace of their presence except for the transformed garden that would greet the morning sun. Maya watched as they dispersed into the darkness, some heading down the street toward their own homes, others disappearing around corners and into the pre-dawn shadows. The last to leave was a leaner, who paused for a moment at the edge of the newly created garden, her hand resting on the gate post as if offering a silent blessing. In the pale light of dawn, Maya could see her lips moving in what might have been a prayer, or simply words of gratitude for the work they had accomplished together. As the sun rose and the street returned to its normal daytime quiet, Maya continued to watch the transformed yard in wonder. What had been a simple, somewhat neglected space just hours before was now a masterpiece of peaceful beauty. The solar lights still glowed softly in the morning light, creating pools of warmth that invited contemplation and rest. The lavender bushes swayed gently in the morning breeze, releasing their calming scent into the air. But the most beautiful part of the transformation was yet to come. Around 7 a.m., Maya saw the front door of the house open, and an elderly man emerged for what was clearly his morning routine of checking the mail and perhaps watering a few plants. Maya watched his face as he took in the transformation of his yard, saw the moment when surprise gave way to wonder, and wonder gave way to tears of joy. The man stood in the center of his new garden for a long time, turning slowly to take in every detail of the gift he had been given. Maya could see his lips moving, and she imagined he was saying thank you to the morning air, to the universe, to the mysterious angels who had worked through the night to create this beauty for him. As she finally stepped away from the window and prepared to start her own day, Maya felt a profound shift in her understanding of what community could mean. She had witnessed something extraordinary, a group of people who had chosen to spend their precious sleeping hours creating beauty and joy for someone else, asking nothing in return except the satisfaction of having brought more love into the world. The image of the midnight gardeners stayed with her throughout the day, inspiring her and filling her with a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in years. As she went about her routine, making coffee, checking emails, running errands, she found herself thinking about the quiet magic she had witnessed and wondering what other mysterious kindnesses might be happening all around her, invisible to most, but creating ripples of healing and joy that touched every corner of the community. That evening, as she prepared for bed, Maya found herself hoping that she might be lucky enough to witness another midnight miracle. The memory of the gardener's quiet work had planted seeds of inspiration in her own heart, seeds that were already beginning to sprout into ideas about how she might contribute to the mysterious tradition of random kindness that seemed to be the heartbeat of Harmony Lane. Chapter 4: The Music of Belonging. The following Saturday morning brought with it an unusual sound that drew Maya from her kitchen, where she had been enjoying a leisurely breakfast while reading. It was music, but not the kind that drifted from car radios or home stereos. This was something else entirely. The sound of multiple voices blending together in harmony, accompanied by what sounded like a small orchestra of acoustic instruments. Maya stepped onto her front porch and was delighted to discover that the music was coming from the small park at the end of Harmony Lane, a green space she had noticed in her walks but hadn't yet explored. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a folk song that seemed to speak of homecomings and harvest celebrations, of communities gathered together in gratitude and joy. Drawn by the music and by her growing curiosity about the neighborhood's capacity for surprise, Maya made her way down the street toward the park. As she walked, she noticed that she wasn't the only one being called by the music. Other neighbors were emerging from their homes, some still in their pajamas and robes, others dressed for weekend errands that had been forgotten in favor of investigating this unexpected concert. The park itself was larger than Maya had realized, with mature trees creating natural amphitheaters of shade, and several open grassy areas, perfect for gathering. As she approached, she could see the musicians arranged in a loose circle near the center of the park, their instruments catching the morning sunlight and reflecting it back in flashes of brass and wood. But this wasn't a formal concert or a planned performance. Maya quickly realized that she was witnessing something much more organic and magical, a spontaneous gathering of neighbors who had brought their instruments and their voices together for the simple joy of making music. There was no stage, no tickets, no formal beginning or end. People were simply arriving, finding their place in the circle, and adding their voices to the growing tapestry of sound. Alina was there, her silver hair catching the morning light as she played a violin with the skill of someone who had been making music for decades. The mailman, whose name Maya had learned was David, was keeping rhythm on a large frame drum, his steady beat providing a foundation for the other instruments to dance around. The young woman with curly hair who had been hanging wind chimes in the midnight garden was now playing a wooden flute, her melody weaving in and out of the other voices like a bird in flight. As Maya drew closer, she noticed that the music was constantly evolving, with new instruments joining the harmony as more neighbors arrived. A teenager had brought a guitar and was finding his way into the chord progressions, while an elderly woman was adding the sweet tones of a dulcimer to the mix. Someone else had brought a small accordion, and another person was playing what looked like a handmade wooden harp. The most beautiful aspect of the gathering was how naturally people found their way into the music. There was no sheet music, no conductor, no predetermined structure. Instead, the musicians seemed to communicate through some invisible thread, sensing when to play louder or softer, when to introduce new melodies or return to familiar themes. It was as if the music itself were a living thing, growing and changing with each new voice that joined the circle. Maya found herself drawn into the gathering almost without realizing it. She had never considered herself a musician, but something about the inclusive nature of the circle made her feel welcome to participate in whatever way felt natural. When someone handed her a small shaker filled with what sounded like seeds or small stones, she found herself keeping time with the rhythm, adding her own small contribution to the growing symphony. As the morning progressed, the music began to attract people from beyond the immediate neighborhood. Joggers paused in their runs to listen, their faces softening as the peaceful melodies worked their magic. A family with small children had spread a blanket on the grass nearby, the parents swaying to the music while their children danced with the unconscious joy that comes naturally to young hearts. The songs seemed to flow from one to another without pause, each melody emerging from the ending of the last like flowers blooming in a continuous garden. Maya recognized some of the tune's old folk songs about rivers and mountains, lullabies that spoke of rest and peace, celebration songs that honored the simple joy of being alive and together. But it was between the songs that Maya began to understand the deeper purpose of the gathering. During the brief pauses when one melody was ending and another was beginning, she could hear the neighborhood waking up around them, the sound of screen doors opening, the gentle hum of conversation from nearby porches, the laughter of children who had been drawn from their Saturday morning cartoons by the promise of live music. The musicians were creating more than beautiful sounds. They were weaving a web of connection that was drawing the entire community together. People who might have spent their Saturday mornings isolated in their individual homes were instead finding themselves part of something larger, something that celebrated the simple pleasure of making beauty together. Around noon, as the sun climbed higher and the day began to grow warm, the music began to shift towards something that felt like a natural conclusion. The melodies became softer, more contemplative, as if the musicians were preparing to send their listeners back into the world with a sense of peace and connection that would carry them through the week ahead. The final song was a wordless melody that seemed to speak of gratitude and blessing, of community and homecoming. As it drew to a close, Maya found herself with tears in her eyes, moved by the beauty of what she had witnessed, and by her own sense of belonging to something precious and rare. As the last notes faded into the morning air, the musicians began to pack up their instruments. But there was no sense of ending or departure. Instead, conversations sparked up naturally, people sharing stories and laughter, children running between the adults in games of tag that seemed to have no rules except joy. The formal music had ended, but the gathering continued, morphing into something that felt like a neighborhood festival that had been organized by the universe itself. Maya found herself in conversation with a woman named Sarah, who had been playing a beautiful wooden recorder during the concert. Sarah explained that the music gathering happened spontaneously several times a month, usually on Saturday mornings, always without formal planning or organization. It started about 3 years ago, Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with the memory. David was walking through the park early one morning with his drum, just practicing some rhythms he'd been working on. Alina heard him from her garden and brought her violin over to join him. Before they knew it, they had attracted a small crowd, and people started showing up with their own instruments. "It's become a tradition now," David added, having overheard their conversation. "People know that if they bring their instruments to the park on Saturday mornings, they'll probably find others who want to make music together." It's one of those beautiful things that grew organically, without anyone trying to control or organize it. As the gathering gradually dispersed, Maya found herself walking home with a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in months. The music had worked its way into her cells, creating a rhythm of contentment that seemed to match the gentle pace of her footsteps. She realized that she had been holding herself separate from community for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be part of something beautiful and spontaneous. That afternoon, as she sat in her small garden with a cup of tea, Maya found herself humming melodies from the morning's concert. The songs had taken root in her memory, and she discovered that they provided a soundtrack for the simple activities of her day: washing dishes, watering plants, reading on the porch. The music had become a gift that kept giving, a source of joy that would continue to bloom long after the last notes had faded. As evening approached, Maya found herself looking forward to sleep with a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with escaping the day and everything to do with dreaming of the music. She had a feeling that her dreams would be filled with the sound of voices blending in harmony, of instruments dancing together in spontaneous joy, of a community that had remembered one of humanity's oldest secrets, that making music together is one of the most direct paths to healing and connection. Chapter 5: The Choreography of Kindness. Tuesday afternoon brought an unexpected interruption to Maya's work-from-home routine. She had been struggling with a particularly difficult project when the sound of many feet moving in synchronization drew her attention to the street outside her window. What she saw made her forget all about spreadsheets and deadlines. A group of about 20 people was moving down Harmony Lane in what could only be described as a walking dance. They weren't performing for an audience. In fact, they seemed almost unaware of being watched. But their movements were so graceful and coordinated that Maya found herself mesmerized. Each person moved to the rhythm of music that only they could hear, yet somehow they were all perfectly in sync. Maya watched as the group paused in front of the house where the midnight gardeners had worked their magic. The elderly man who lived there was sitting on his new bench, enjoying the afternoon sun and the fragrance of his lavender plants. As he looked up to see what was happening, the group began to move in a choreographed pattern that seemed designed specifically to showcase the beauty of his transformed garden. The dance was unlike anything Maya had ever seen. It combined elements of ballet, folk dancing, and what looked like Tai Chi, flowing from one movement to another with liquid grace. Some dancers moved in spirals around the lavender bushes, their arms extended like wings, while others created geometric patterns on the sidewalk that seemed to echo the circular design of the meditation area. What made the performance truly magical was its obvious intention. This wasn't a dance for entertainment or applause. It was a celebration of the garden itself, a physical expression of gratitude for the beauty that had been created. The dancers moved as if they were honoring something sacred, their faces peaceful and focused, their movements precise, yet somehow organic. Maya found herself drawn outside, unable to resist the pull of the extraordinary scene unfolding on her street. As she joined the small group of neighbors who had gathered to watch, she noticed that the elderly man was crying not from sadness, but from a joy so profound that it couldn't be contained. He was witnessing something that probably happened once in a lifetime. A moment when the universe seemed to organize itself around the simple act of honoring beauty. The dance continued for perhaps 10 minutes, with the group moving through a series of formations that seemed to tell a story. Maya watched as they created the shape of a flowering tree, their arms serving as branches, while the dancers in the center swayed like a trunk in a gentle breeze. Then they flowed into a pattern that resembled water, each dancer a drop in a stream that circled the garden and returned to its source. As the dance reached its conclusion, the group formed a large circle around the entire front yard, their arms raised toward the sky in a gesture that seemed to call down blessings on the space and the man who tended it. In the center of the circle, the elderly man stood slowly from his bench, his hands pressed together in a prayer position, his face radiant with gratitude. The final moment of the dance took Maya's breath away. The entire group moved inward, their circle becoming smaller and smaller until they were close enough to the man to offer him their hands. For a moment, they all stood connected, dancers and witness united in a web of human connection that seemed to sanctify the very air around them. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the dance was over. The group began to disperse, but not in the way Maya expected. Instead of leaving immediately, they lingered, sharing quiet words with the man and with each other. Maya watched as several of the dancers bent to smell the lavender, their faces showing the same appreciation for the garden's beauty that had been expressed through their movement. Elinor appeared at Maya's side, having emerged from her own garden to witness the magical performance. "That's our flash mob," she said, her voice warm with pride and affection. "They call themselves the Harmony Dancers, and they appear whenever someone in the neighborhood needs to be reminded of how much beauty they've brought into the world." "How did they know to come here?" Maya asked, still processing the wonder of what she had witnessed. "Word travels fast on this street," Elinor smiled. "When the midnight gardeners finished their work, someone mentioned that Harold, that's our gentleman there, had been feeling a bit lonely since his wife passed last year. The dancers decided he needed to see how much his neighbors care about him and appreciate the beauty he helps create just by being here. Maya looked back at Harold, who was now moving slowly through his garden, touching each plant with obvious tenderness. The dancers had given him something more precious than entertainment. They had shown him that his presence in the community was valued, that his quiet contributions to the neighborhood's beauty had been noticed and celebrated. How do they coordinate something like this? Maya asked, fascinated by the logistics of such spontaneous beauty. They don't, really, Alina explained. It's more like intuition. Someone gets an idea that a particular person or place needs celebrating, and they put the word out. People show up if they can, and they create something beautiful together. There's no rehearsal, no formal choreography. They just trust that when people come together with good intentions, something magical will happen. As they watched, several of the dancers approached Maya and Alina. Maya recognized some faces from the midnight gardening and the Saturday morning music circle. But there were new faces, 2 people she hadn't seen before, but who carried the same quality of peaceful intention that seemed to characterize everyone on Harmony Lane. A woman with kind eyes and graceful movements introduced herself as Lily. You're our new neighbor, aren't you? We've been hoping you'd join us sometime. Have you ever done any movement or dance? Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety at the invitation. She had been a dancer in college, but years of desk work and stress had left her feeling disconnected from her body, unsure of her ability to move with any kind of grace. I used to dance, she admitted, but it's been a long time. The body remembers, said another dancer, a man with silver-streaked hair and the lean build of someone who had been moving gracefully for decades. And anyway, this isn't about perfect technique. It's about expressing joy and connection. Your body knows how to do that, even if your mind has forgotten. Before Maya could protest or make excuses, she found herself being gently invited into a small circle of dancers who had spontaneously formed on the sidewalk. The movement began slowly, just a gentle swaying that seemed to match the rhythm of the afternoon breeze. Maya felt her shoulders begin to relax as she allowed herself to follow the simple rhythm. Gradually, the movement became more complex, but in such a natural way that Maya found herself able to follow without thinking. The dancers moved like water, flowing around each other in patterns that seemed both ancient and completely new. Maya discovered that her body did indeed remember how to dance. Not the formal steps she had learned in classes, but something deeper, the innate human ability to express emotion through movement. As the impromptu dance continued, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. The tight knot of anxiety that had been her constant companion began to loosen, replaced by a sense of lightness and connection that she hadn't experienced in years. Moving with these generous strangers felt like coming home to a part of herself she had thought was lost forever. The dance naturally came to an end as the afternoon sun began to slant through the trees, creating long shadows that painted the street in shades of gold and amber. The dancers embraced each other, and Maya with the easy affection of old friends, even though most of them had just met her for the first time. "Same time next week?" Lily asked Maya, her invitation carrying no pressure, only open-hearted welcome. Yes," Maya found herself saying, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I'd love to." As the group dispersed, Maya felt Aliner's gentle hand on her arm. "How do you feel?" the older woman asked, her eyes twinkling with something that might have been mischief. Maya took a moment to assess herself, paying attention to the sensations in her body and the quality of her thoughts. "Light," she said finally. "Like I've been carrying something heavy and didn't realize it until I put it down." "That's the gift of moving with others," Aliner said. "When we dance together, we remember that we're not alone in the world, that our individual struggles are part of a larger dance that includes everyone. The harmony dancers understand that healing happens in community, that joy multiplies when it's shared." As they walked back toward their respective homes, Maya found herself moving differently than she had just an hour before. Her steps were lighter, more fluid, as if the dance had reminded her muscles how to carry her through the world with grace rather than tension. The simple act of walking had become a meditation, a way of staying connected to the peace she had discovered in movement. That evening, as Maya prepared dinner, she found herself swaying to music only she could hear. The vegetables seemed to chop themselves as her knife moved in rhythm with an internal song. And even the simple act of stirring a pot of soup became a form of dance. The afternoon's experience had awakened something in her that refused to go back to sleep. An awareness of the body's wisdom that transformed even the most mundane activities into opportunities for grace. As she sat down to eat, Maya realized that the harmony dancers had given her more than a moment of beautiful movement. They had reminded her that her body was not just a vehicle for getting through the day, but an instrument of expression and connection, a way of participating in the ongoing dance of community and care that seemed to be the secret heart of Harmony Lane. The memory of dancing with the group stayed with her as she prepared for bed, filling her with a sense of anticipation for the next week's gathering. For the first time in months, Maya found herself looking forward to something, planning to participate in community rather than simply observing from the sidelines. The dancers had invited her into something precious. The knowledge that healing happens not in isolation, but in the graceful interplay of hearts and bodies moving together toward joy. Chapter 6: The Secret Sanctuary. On Thursday evening, while walking her now familiar route around Harmony Lane, Maya noticed Alina beckoning to her from the small gate that led to the back of her property. There was something mysterious in the older woman's gesture, a quality of excitement barely contained that made Maya curious about what new wonder might be waiting to be discovered. "I have something to show you," Alina said, her eyes sparkling with the same mischievous light Maya had come to associate with the neighborhood's many surprises. "But it's a secret that can only be shared with people who understand the importance of sanctuary." Maya felt a thrill of anticipation as she followed Alina along a narrow path that wound behind her cottage and into what appeared to be a much larger garden than was visible from the street. The path was lined with luminescent white stones that seemed to glow softly in the evening light, creating a pathway that felt both practical and magical. As they walked deeper into the garden, Maya began to understand that what she had thought was Alina's backyard was actually something much more significant. The space seemed to extend far beyond the boundaries of a single property, flowing seamlessly into the backyards of several neighboring houses in a way that suggested careful planning and community cooperation. "Welcome to the Heart Garden," Alina said, as they emerged into a clearing that took Maya's breath away. The Heart Garden was perhaps an acre in size, a hidden oasis that existed in the secret center of the neighborhood block. It had been designed as a series of interconnected spaces, each with its own character and purpose, but all flowing together in a harmonious whole that felt like nature's own cathedral. The space immediately in front of them was clearly designed for meditation and reflection. A large labyrinth had been created using smooth river stones, its spiral path winding toward a center where a single oak tree provided shelter and shade. Around the labyrinth, someone had planted a carefully chosen selection of herbs and flowers known for their calming properties. Chamomile, lavender, lemon balm, and others Maya couldn't identify, but whose fragrances created a natural aromatherapy that seemed to slow her heartbeat just by breathing. "How long has this been here?" Maya asked, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. "The Heart Garden has been growing for about 15 years, Alina explained, leading Maya toward a small wooden bridge that spanned a narrow creek Maya hadn't known existed. "It started when several of us realized that our individual backyards shared common borders, and we began to wonder what might be possible if we thought of the space as one large garden instead of several small ones. As they crossed the bridge, Maya could hear the gentle sound of water flowing over stones, a natural soundtrack that seemed to wash away the accumulated stress of the day. The creek was shallow but clear, with small fish visible darting between water plants that had been carefully chosen to provide both beauty and natural filtration. Beyond the bridge lay what Alina called the healing circle, a perfectly round clearing surrounded by 7 ancient trees that seemed to have been growing there long before any houses were built in the neighborhood. In the center of the circle, someone had created a small fire pit surrounded by comfortable stones that had been arranged to serve as natural seating. "This is where we gather for the full moon circles," Alina said, settling onto one of the stones and patting the one beside her in invitation. "Once a month, people from all over the neighborhood come here to share what's weighing on their hearts and to offer support to one another. It's not religious or formal, just people who understand that healing happens best in community." Maya settled beside Alina, feeling the warmth that the stone had absorbed from the day's sun. Around the circle, she could see small tokens that had been left by previous gatherings, smooth stones painted with symbols of hope, small crystals that caught the evening light, feathers that had been found and offered as gifts to the sacred space. "What kinds of things do people share?" Maya asked, drawn by the obvious peace of the space, but also curious about how vulnerable people were willing to be with their neighbors. "Everything," Alina said simply. "Grief over lost loved ones, anxiety about work or health, joy over children's accomplishments, gratitude for unexpected kindnesses. The circle holds it all without judgment. People have been sharing their hearts here for so long that the space itself seems to radiate compassion." As they sat in the gathering dusk, Maya became aware of other sounds drifting through the heart garden. Somewhere nearby, wind chimes sang their gentle songs, harmonizing with the sound of water over stones and the whisper of leaves in the evening breeze. The combination created a natural symphony that seemed designed to induce the deepest states of relaxation and peace. Alina rose and led Maya along another path, this one winding through what appeared to be a food forest where fruit trees, berry bushes, and vegetable gardens grew together in a carefully designed ecosystem. "This is the abundance garden," Alina explained. "Everything here is shared. People plant what calls to them, tend what needs tending, and harvest what they need. It's amazing how much food can be grown when people work together, instead of each family trying to do everything on their own." Maya marveled at the diversity of plants growing in harmonious profusion. There were apple and pear trees heavy with fruit, grapevines climbing over sturdy trellises, raised beds filled with vegetables she recognized, and others that were completely foreign to her. The entire area buzzed with the quiet activity of bees and butterflies, creating a sense of abundance and vitality that made her feel grateful just to witness it. The path continued deeper into the heart garden, leading to areas Maya was told served different functions for the community. There was a quiet corner filled with comfortable chairs and weatherproof bookshelves where people could come to read in the peace of nature. Another area had been designed as a children's play space with a tree house, rope swings, and sandbox, all nestled into the landscape so naturally that they seemed to have grown from the earth itself. But it was the final destination of their tour that moved Maya most deeply. Elinor led her to a small grove of weeping willows, whose branches created a natural tent around a space that felt incredibly private and protected. Inside the grove, someone had created what could only be called a grief sanctuary, a place specifically designed for those who needed to process loss and sorrow in safety and beauty. The space was simple but profound. A small bench faced a wall of stones where people had carved names and messages, creating a memorial that honored loved ones who had passed away. Around the bench, someone had planted flowers that bloomed in cycles throughout the year, ensuring that the space would always offer beauty to those who came seeking comfort. We learned early on that community isn't just about celebrating joy, Elinor said quietly. True community also means having space for grief, for healing, for the difficult emotions that are part of being human. This grove has held more tears than we could count, but it's also been the place where people find the strength to go on, knowing they're not alone in their pain. Maya felt tears prick her own eyes, moved by the obvious love and thought that had gone into creating a space for one of humanity's most difficult experiences. She thought of her own recent struggles with anxiety and disconnection, and realized that she had been trying to heal in isolation, when what she had really needed was exactly this: a community that understood the importance of holding space for whatever was real and present in people's lives. As they made their way back toward Elinor's cottage, following the luminescent stone path through the gathering darkness, Maya felt profoundly changed by what she had experienced. The heart garden wasn't just a beautiful space. It was a living testament to what becomes possible when people choose to create sanctuary together, when they understand that true security comes not from walls and locks, but from relationships and shared care. How many people know about this place? Maya asked as they reached Elinor's back gate. Everyone on the surrounding streets knows it exists, Elinor said, but we don't advertise it widely. We've learned that the people who most need sanctuary have a way of finding it, usually when they're ready to receive what it has to offer. As Maya walked home through the quiet evening streets, she felt as if she were carrying a piece of the heart garden with her. The piece of the meditation labyrinth, the abundance of the food forest, the compassion of the healing circle. She realized that Alina had been right about sanctuary being something that can only be shared with people who understand its importance. The heart garden required not just discretion, but reverence, an appreciation for the sacred nature of space that has been set aside for healing and community. That night, as she prepared for bed, Maya found herself planning to return to the heart garden soon, not as a tourist, but as someone ready to participate in the deep work of community healing. The space had awakened in her a longing she hadn't fully recognized, the need to be part of something larger than herself, something that honored both joy and sorrow, abundance and need, celebration and grief. The memory of the heart garden followed her into sleep, where her dreams were filled with flowing water, ancient trees, and circles of people sharing their hearts under starlight. She dreamed of labyrinth walks that led to the center of her own healing, of abundance gardens where her own gifts could take root and flourish, of spaces so safe and sacred that the deepest truths could be spoken without fear. Chapter 7: The Feast of Gratitude. Sunday morning arrived with an unusual bustle of activity on Harmony Lane. Maya woke to the sounds of gentle conversation and the clatter of dishes being moved, punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter that seemed to bubble up from somewhere near the heart garden. Curious and drawn by the obvious excitement in the air, she dressed quickly and made her way outside to investigate. What she discovered was a community feast in the making, a spontaneous celebration that seemed to be organizing itself with the same magical efficiency she had witnessed in all the neighborhood's other mysterious kindnesses. Tables were appearing as if by magic, carried from various houses and arranged in a long serpentine line that wound through the common areas of the heart garden, creating a dining space that could accommodate what looked like the entire neighborhood. Alina spotted Maya approaching and waved her over with obvious delight. "Perfect timing," she called out. "We're having our monthly gratitude feast, and we could use some help with the flower arrangements." Maya found herself swept into the preparations, assigned to work with a group of neighbors who were creating centerpieces from flowers and herbs harvested from the various gardens throughout the community. It was delicate, meditative work that required attention to color and scent, balance and beauty. But the conversations that flowed around the work table made it feel more like play than labor. She worked alongside David the mailman, who turned out to have an unexpected talent for floral design, and Sarah from the Saturday morning music circle, whose wooden recorder was never far from her side. As they arranged roses and lavender, chamomile and mint, Maya learned more about the feast tradition and its place in the community's rhythm of celebration and care. The gratitude feast started about 5 years ago, Sarah explained as she wove sprigs of rosemary through an arrangement of white roses. We had been having potluck dinners occasionally, but someone suggested that we make it specifically about gratitude, a time for people to share what they're thankful for and to acknowledge all the ways we support each other throughout the month. It's become one of our most treasured traditions, David added, carefully placing sprigs of lavender around the edge of a low bowl filled with floating candles. There's something about eating together outdoors, sharing food that people have made with love. That creates a sense of family that goes beyond blood relations. As the morning progressed, Maya watched in amazement as the feast preparations revealed the true depth of the community's interconnectedness. People arrived carrying dishes that had clearly been coordinated in advance, though she never saw anyone consulting lists or making assignments. Somehow, everyone knew what to bring, and the result was a menu that seemed designed by a master chef rather than organized by chance. There were casseroles that spoke of comfort and home, salads made from vegetables grown in the abundance garden, fresh breads that filled the air with yeast and warmth, and desserts that looked like works of art, but more than the food itself. Maya was struck by the obvious love that had gone into every dish, the care that was evident in each carefully chosen ingredient and thoughtful presentation. The tables themselves became works of art as the morning progressed. The flower arrangements Maya had helped create were placed at intervals along the serpentine dining space, their fragrances blending with the sense of the food to create an aromatherapy of celebration. Someone had strung lights through the trees overhead, creating a canopy of gentle illumination that would provide warmth and magic as the day faded into evening. Around midday, as the feast preparations neared completion, people began to gather in small groups throughout the heart garden, their conversations creating a gentle hum of anticipation and joy. Maya noticed that the gathering included people of all ages, from toddlers who ran laughing between the tables to elderly neighbors who settled into comfortable chairs with obvious contentment. The formal beginning of the feast was as gentle and organic as everything else in the neighborhood. There was no announcement or call to attention, just a gradual settling of people around the tables, a natural pause in conversation as everyone found their places. Maya found herself seated between a leaner and a young mother named Carmen, whose twin daughters immediately adopted Maya as their honorary aunt for the afternoon. Before the food was served, David rose with his frame drum and began a slow, steady rhythm that seemed to call everyone into a shared moment of reflection. One by one, people began to share what they were grateful for, their voices weaving together in a spontaneous chorus of appreciation and recognition. I'm grateful for midnight gardeners who remember that beauty is a gift we give each other, Harold said, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke of the transformation of his front yard. I'm grateful for neighbors who know how to hold space for grief, said a woman Maya hadn't met, whose words suggested she had found comfort in the heart garden's sacred grove. I'm grateful for flash mobs that remind us our bodies know how to dance, added Lily, the graceful dancer who had invited Maya into their circle. As the sharing continued around the table, Maya felt her own heart opening in ways she hadn't expected. The gratitude being expressed wasn't just polite thankfulness, but deep recognition of the specific ways people had cared for each other, had shown up in times of need, had created beauty and meaning in the everyday moments of community life. When the sharing reached Maya, she felt momentarily overwhelmed by the depth of what she wanted to express. I'm grateful, she said finally, for a neighborhood that remembered how to be a community, and for neighbors who taught me that healing doesn't happen in isolation. The feast itself was a celebration of abundance that went far beyond the food. Though the food was extraordinary, each dish seemed to tell a story of the hands that had prepared it, the garden where ingredients had been grown, the love that had motivated its creation. Maya found herself tasting flavors she had never experienced, combinations of herbs and spices that had been passed down through families or discovered through experimentation in the community gardens. But more than the food, what nourished Maya was the quality of conversation that flowed around the table. People spoke with genuine interest about each other's lives, asked thoughtful questions, shared stories that revealed the depth of their connections to each other and to the place they had created together. As the afternoon wore on, the feast evolved into something that felt like a cross between a family reunion and a harvest festival. Children who had finished eating early began games of tag between the tables, their laughter providing a soundtrack of joy that seemed to bless the entire gathering. Adults lingered over dessert and coffee, their conversations deepening as the day's warmth and the community's affection worked their magic. As evening approached and solar lights began to twinkle in the trees overhead, someone brought out instruments, and the feast gradually transformed into an impromptu concert. The music was gentler than the Saturday morning gatherings, more intimate and contemplative, as if the food and gratitude had created a deeper level of connection that called for softer expressions of joy. Maya found herself participating without self-consciousness, her voice blending with others in songs that seemed to emerge from the collective heart of the community. She realized that she had never experienced anything like this, a gathering that felt both completely natural and utterly magical, ordinary and sacred at the same time. As the feast began to wind down and people started the gentle process of cleaning up, Maya felt a profound sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with the food she had eaten. She had been nourished on a level that went far deeper than physical hunger, fed by the love and attention that had been lavished on every aspect of the gathering. The cleanup itself became another form of community meditation, with people working together to restore the heart garden to its usual tranquil state. Maya found herself washing dishes alongside Harold, listening to him describe the changes he had noticed in his own garden since the midnight transformation. His voice filled with wonder at the way beauty seemed to multiply when it was shared. As the last table was folded and carried away, as the final dishes were washed and returned to their owners, Maya felt as if she had participated in something that would stay with her forever. The gratitude feast had been more than a meal. It had been a communion, a reminder of what becomes possible when people choose to celebrate their interconnectedness rather than their independence. Walking home through the quiet streets, still fragrant with the lingering sense of the feast, Maya realized that she had crossed some invisible threshold. She was no longer an observer of the community's magic. She had become a participant, a contributor to the ongoing creation of beauty and connection that seemed to be the heartbeat of Harmony Lane. Chapter 8: The Circle of Stories. 3 weeks later, on a cool evening that carried the first hint of autumn in its breeze, Maya received a gentle knock on her door. Eleanor stood on her porch, holding a small basket covered with a cloth that smelled of fresh herbs and warm bread. Her eyes held their familiar twinkle, but there was something deeper there tonight, a quality of anticipation that suggested another of the neighborhood's beautiful mysteries was about to unfold. "It's time for the circle of stories," Eleanor said simply, handing Maya the basket. "I thought you might like to join us tonight. We gather whenever someone has a story that needs to be heard, and tonight is Harold's turn to share." Maya felt a flutter of curiosity mixed with honor at being invited to what sounded like an intimate gathering. The basket Eleanor had given her contained what appeared to be small meal: homemade bread, cheese, fruit, and herbs, wrapped with the same care and attention she had come to expect from everything in the neighborhood. "What kind of stories?" Maya asked as they walked together toward the heart garden, following the now familiar path of luminescent stones that seemed to glow more brightly in the deepening twilight. "Life stories," Eleanor explained, the real ones, the ones that tell us who we are and how we became that way. We've learned that healing happens when people have the chance to tell their truth to witnesses who really listen without judgment or the need to fix anything. As they entered the heart garden, Maya could see that the healing circle had been prepared for the evening's gathering. Small solar lanterns had been placed around the perimeter, creating a soft circle of light that felt both intimate and sacred. Comfortable cushions and low chairs had been arranged around the fire pit, where a small fire crackled with the cheerful sounds of burning applewood. About 15 people were already gathered. Some faces Maya recognized, and others she was meeting for the first time. Everyone carried similar baskets to the one Alina had given her, and Maya realized that sharing food was part of the ritual, a way of nourishing both body and spirit while stories were being told. Harold sat in what was clearly a place of honor, a comfortable chair placed so that the firelight would illuminate his face as he spoke. He looked nervous, but also peaceful, as if he had been preparing for this moment and was ready to share whatever truth was waiting to be spoken. As people settled into their places, Maya noticed that the atmosphere was different from the other gatherings she had attended. There was a quality of reverence here, a sense that something sacred was about to happen that required their full presence and attention. Conversations were quieter, movements more deliberate, as if everyone understood that they were entering sacred space. David began the evening with a gentle rhythm on his frame drum, not the celebratory beats of the music gatherings, but something slower and deeper, a rhythm that seemed to call everyone into a shared state of receptive listening. The sound was hypnotic, creating a sense of timelessness that made the everyday world seem very far away. "We gather tonight to witness Harold's story," Alina said, her voice carrying the formal quality of someone opening a ceremony. "We come as listeners, holding space for whatever truth wants to be shared. We offer our presence as a gift, asking nothing in return except the privilege of hearing and holding what is offered." Harold cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice tentative at first, but growing stronger as he found his rhythm. He told them about his childhood in a small farming town, where his family had grown vegetables that they sold at the local market. He spoke of learning to tend plants from his grandfather, of the satisfaction of watching seeds become food, of feeling connected to the earth in ways that made him feel useful and whole. His story meandered like a gentle stream, touching on his years of military service, his marriage to a woman named Rose, who shared his love of growing things, their decision to move to the city where they had built a life together around their shared garden. He spoke of Rose's illness and death, of the way their garden had felt empty without her laughter filling the spaces between the rows of vegetables. As Harold continued his story, Maya found herself drawn into a state of listening, unlike anything she had experienced before. The combination of the fire's warmth, the drum's steady rhythm, and the obvious trust Harold was placing in the circle created a sense of intimacy that felt both personal and universal. She realized she was witnessing something profound. A human being sharing the essence of who he was with others, who had committed to receiving that gift with complete attention. The most moving part of Harold's story came when he spoke about the morning he had discovered his transformed garden. His voice broke as he described walking outside to find beauty where he had left neglect, care where he had felt abandoned. He told them about sitting on his new bench and feeling Rose's presence in the fragrance of the lavender, hearing her laughter in the sound of the wind chimes. "I had forgotten," he said, tears flowing freely down his cheeks, "that I wasn't alone in the world. I had gotten so lost in missing her that I couldn't see all the ways I was still being loved. The garden reminded me that love doesn't end when people die. It just finds new ways to express itself." The circle held Harold's story in profound silence, offering him the gift of complete acceptance for whatever he needed to share. Maya felt her own tears flowing as she listened, moved not just by Harold's pain and healing, but by the obvious courage it took to trust a group of neighbors with the deepest truths of his heart. When Harold finished speaking, the drum continued its gentle rhythm for several more minutes, allowing his words to settle into the silence and into the hearts of everyone present. Then, one by one, people began to offer brief words of gratitude for what he had shared, not advice or commentary, but simple acknowledgement of the gift he had given them. "Thank you for trusting us with your love for Rose," Sarah said, her voice soft with emotion. "Thank you for showing us how grief and gratitude can exist together," added Lily. "Thank you for letting us witness your healing," said David, his drum finally falling silent. As the formal story sharing concluded, the gathering shifted into something more social, but still deeply connected. People opened their baskets and began sharing food. But the conversations remained intimate and heartfelt, as if Harold's courage in sharing his truth had given everyone permission to speak more openly about their own lives. Maya found herself in conversation with a woman named Maria, who told her about moving to the neighborhood after her divorce, feeling broken and uncertain about how to rebuild her life. "The circle of stories saved me," Maria said simply. "When I finally had the courage to share my story, I realized that my pain wasn't shameful. It was just human. And being human is something we all have in common." As the evening wore on, Maya began to understand that the circle of stories was more than just a support group or social gathering. It was a recognition that every person carried within them a story worth hearing, a truth worth witnessing, a piece of wisdom that could only be shared through the specific experiences of their unique life. The fire began to die down as midnight approached, but nobody seemed in a hurry to leave. The intimacy that had been created through Harold's story sharing seemed too precious to abandon quickly, and people lingered in small conversations, reluctant to break the spell of connection that had been woven throughout the evening. When Maya finally walked home through the quiet streets, she carried with her more than just the memory of Harold's courage and healing. She carried a new understanding of what it meant to truly listen to another person, to offer the gift of witnessing without trying to fix or change or improve. She had learned that there was a difference between hearing words and receiving a story, between responding to what someone said and honoring what they had shared. Most importantly, she had begun to think about her own story and what it might mean to trust others with her truth. The anxiety and disconnection that had driven her to take those first healing walks on Harmony Lane suddenly seemed less like personal failures and more like chapters in a story that was still being written. A story that might have something valuable to offer others who were walking similar paths. As she prepared for bed, Maya found herself thinking about the moment when it might be her turn to sit in the storyteller's chair, to trust the circle with whatever truth was waiting to be spoken. The thought was both terrifying and deeply appealing, like standing at the edge of a cliff that offered the possibility of flight rather than the certainty of falling. Chapter 9: The Healing Web. The invitation came on a Thursday morning, delivered not by Alina this time, but by Harmony, the cat, who appeared at Maya's front door with a small rolled scroll tied to her collar with a silver ribbon. The message, written in flowing script on handmade paper, was simple but intriguing. The full moon healing circle gathers tonight. Come if you feel called to participate in the ancient work of community healing. Follow the path of white stones when the moon rises. Maya had heard references to the full moon circles during her time in the Heart Garden, but she hadn't yet been invited to participate. The invitation felt significant, as if she had crossed some invisible threshold in the community's assessment of her readiness to engage in deeper levels of healing work. As evening approached, Maya found herself feeling both nervous and excited about what the night might bring. She had participated in many of the neighborhood's other gatherings, but something about this invitation suggested a level of intimacy and vulnerability that would be different from anything she had experienced before. The full moon rose like a luminous blessing over Harmony Lane, casting everything in silver light that seemed to make the familiar street look otherworldly and magical. Maya followed the path of white stones through the heart garden, noticing that they seemed to glow more brightly than usual in the moonlight, as if they had been charged with some kind of energy that was only visible under the full moon's illumination. As she approached the healing circle, Maya could see that the space had been prepared with obvious care and intention. The 7 ancient trees that surrounded the circle were draped with flowing white cloth that moved gently in the night breeze, creating the impression of benevolent spirits presiding over the gathering. Small white candles had been placed around the perimeter of the circle, their flames dancing in glass holders that cast intricate shadows on the ground. About 20 people were already gathered, sitting in a perfect circle around the fire pit, where a small fire burned with unusual colors, blues and greens and purples that suggested something other than ordinary wood was feeding the flames. Maya recognized many faces from other neighborhood gatherings, but the atmosphere tonight was completely different, charged with a sense of purpose and sacred intention that made ordinary conversation seem inappropriate. Elena gestured for Maya to take a place in the circle between herself and Sarah, both women offering her gentle smiles that conveyed welcome without words. As Maya settled onto the soft cushion that had been placed for her, she noticed that everyone was wearing white or light-colored clothing, as if there had been some unspoken agreement about creating visual harmony for the evening's work. The circle began with a period of silent meditation that seemed to last for a very long time, though Maya gradually lost track of time altogether. The combination of the fire's unusual colors, the moon's bright presence overhead, and the profound silence of 20 people breathing together created an altered state of consciousness that felt both deeply peaceful and intensely aware. When Elena finally spoke, her voice seemed to come from a great distance, though she was sitting right beside Maya. "We gather tonight under Grandmother Moon to do the ancient work of healing," she said, her words carrying a formal quality that suggested she was speaking from a role larger than her individual self. "We come not to fix or change or improve, but to hold space for whatever wants to be released, whatever wants to be healed, whatever wants to be transformed." What followed was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. One by one, people began to share not stories this time, but the specific wounds and challenges they were carrying, asking the circle to hold them in healing intention. The sharing was both deeply personal and somehow universal, touching on themes that seemed to resonate with everyone present. A young man spoke about struggling with addiction, his voice shaking as he asked for support in finding the strength to continue his recovery. An elderly woman shared her fear about a cancer diagnosis, asking the circle to help her find peace with whatever outcome might come. A mother spoke about her teenage daughter's eating disorder, her pain evident as she asked for healing for her child and wisdom for herself. As each person shared, the circle responded not with words, but with sound, gentle humming that seemed to rise spontaneously from the group, creating a harmonic cradle that held each person's vulnerability with infinite tenderness. Maya found herself joining the humming without conscious decision, her voice blending with others in a way that felt like participating in something ancient and sacred. When her own turn came, Maya surprised herself by speaking about the depression and anxiety that had driven her to seek refuge in the neighborhood. "I've been so disconnected from joy," she heard herself saying, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've forgotten how to trust that good things can happen, that I deserve to feel peaceful and connected. I've been carrying this fear that if I let myself be happy, something terrible will happen to take it away." The circle's humming rose around her words like a warm embrace, and Maya felt something shift deep in her chest, as if speaking her truth had created space for healing to enter. The sound continued for several minutes after she finished speaking, and she found herself crying not from sadness, but from relief at finally having named the fear that had been controlling her life. After everyone who wished to share had spoken, Alina rose and moved to the center of the circle, carrying a small bundle of herbs that filled the air with the scent of sage and sweetgrass. When she lit them, the smoke rising from the bundle seemed to carry with it all the pain and fear that had been shared, transforming it into something that could be released to the night sky. "We offer these burdens to the moon and stars," Alina said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been doing this sacred work for many years. "We ask that what no longer serves be transformed into wisdom, that what has caused pain be transformed into compassion, that what has divided us from joy be transformed into wholeness." As the smoke from the herbs swirled around the circle, Maya felt a profound sense of lightness, as if invisible weights were being lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't the only one experiencing this release. She could see in the faces around the circle the same expression of wonder and relief that she felt in her own body. The healing work continued as people began to offer specific intentions for each other, creating a web of support that seemed to glow with its own light in the moonlit circle. Sarah offered to hold healing energy for the young man struggling with addiction. David committed to checking in regularly with the elderly woman facing cancer. Maya found herself volunteering to support the mother whose daughter was struggling, offering practical help with meals and household tasks during difficult days. As these commitments were made, Maya began to understand that the full moon healing circle wasn't just about sharing burdens. It was about creating a support network that would continue long after the ceremony ended. The circle was weaving connections between people that would provide ongoing comfort and assistance, turning individual struggles into community challenges that could be met with collective wisdom and care. The most magical moment of the evening came when the entire circle joined hands and began to move in a slow, clockwise spiral around the fire. The movement was simple but profound, creating a sense of unity that seemed to connect not just the people present, but all the healing work that had been done in this space over the years. All the moon circles that had come before and all that would come after. As they moved together, people began to sing not words, but pure sound that seemed to emerge from some place deeper than thought. The harmonies were complex and beautiful, rising and falling like waves, sometimes building to powerful crescendos that seemed to shake the very earth, sometimes dropping to whispers that barely disturbed the night air. Maya found herself singing with complete abandon, her voice joining the others in sounds she had never made before. But that felt absolutely right and natural. The singing seemed to go on for hours, carrying all of them into a state of consciousness that felt both deeply grounded and completely transcendent. When the singing finally faded into silence, the circle naturally came to rest. People settled back onto their cushions, but the sense of connection remained as strong as when they had been moving together. The fire had burned down to glowing embers that pulsed like a heartbeat, and the moon overhead seemed closer and brighter than it had at the beginning of the evening. The closing of the circle was as gentle as its opening had been formal. People began to share brief words of gratitude, not for what they had received, but for what they had been able to give, for the privilege of being trusted with others' pain and healing. Maya realized that the evening had transformed her understanding of what it meant to be helpful. That sometimes the greatest gift was simply showing up with an open heart and a willingness to witness whatever was true. As the gathering began to disperse, people embraced each other with the tenderness of family members who had shared something profound together. Maya found herself hugged by people she had just met, held by neighbors who had become sisters and brothers in the space of a single evening. The embraces felt like blessings, sealing the healing work that had been done and promising continued connection in the days ahead. Walking home through the moonlit garden, Maya felt as if she were moving through a different world than the one she had entered just a few hours before. The depression and anxiety she had carried for months felt significantly lighter, not because they had been magically cured, but because they were no longer secrets she had to carry alone. The circle had shown her that healing happened not in isolation, but in community, not through individual effort, but through collective holding and support. The most surprising discovery of the evening was how much healing had come through her own participation in holding space for others. Maya realized that focusing on the pain and struggles of her circle mates had somehow eased her own suffering, that offering her presence as a gift to others had returned to her as a gift of perspective and purpose. As she prepared for bed, Maya found herself looking forward to the next full moon, to the opportunity to once again participate in the ancient and sacred work of community healing. She understood now that she had found more than a neighborhood. She had found a healing community, a group of people committed to supporting each other through all the challenges and transitions that life offered. The moon's light continued to pour through her bedroom window as she drifted toward sleep, and Maya felt held and blessed by forces larger than herself. The healing web that had been woven in the circle seemed to extend beyond the boundaries of the garden, connecting her to all the people who were doing this sacred work in communities around the world. All the circles gathering under the same moon to practice the ancient arts of listening, witnessing, and healing together. Chapter 10: The Garden of Hearts. 6 months had passed since Maya first discovered Harmony Lane, and autumn had painted the neighborhood in shades of gold and crimson that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The trees that had welcomed her with their gentle summer rustling now offered the more dramatic music of leaves dancing in the crisp October air, creating natural symphonies that changed with each gust of wind. Maya had become not just a participant in the neighborhood's magic, but one of its co-creators. Her own gifts and insights weaving seamlessly into the ongoing tapestry of community care. She had learned to tend the abundance garden with the same attention Alina gave to her roses, had become one of the midnight gardeners who worked under starlight to create beauty for neighbors who needed reminding of how much they were loved. This evening, as she walked the familiar paths through the Heart Garden, Maya was preparing for something that felt both culminating and beginning. It was her turn to offer a story to the circle of stories, her opportunity to share with the community how much her life had changed since that first evening when she had discovered the bench beneath the oak tree. The gathering was larger than usual, as word had somehow spread that Maya would be sharing her transformation story. People had come from throughout the neighborhood and even from surrounding streets, drawn by curiosity about the woman who had arrived 6 months ago, carrying such obvious pain, and who now moved through the community with the grace of someone who had remembered how to trust life's essential goodness. As Maya settled into the storyteller's chair, looking out at faces that had become as familiar as family. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. The fire pit glowed with warmth that seemed to reach not just her body, but her soul. And the circle of listening faces offered her the same gift of presence that she had learned to offer others. "I came to this neighborhood 6 months ago," Maya began, her voice steady despite the emotion she felt, "because I had forgotten how to be happy. I had spent so many years focused on productivity and achievement that I had lost touch with the simple pleasure of being alive. I was successful by most measures, but I felt empty and disconnected, as if I were watching my life happen from a great distance rather than actually living it." She told them about that first evening walk, about discovering the bench and feeling for the first time in months that she might be in a place where rest was possible. She spoke about meeting a leaner and discovering the secret garden, about witnessing the midnight gardeners and beginning to understand that there were people in the world who chose to spend their time creating beauty for others without expecting anything in return. Each experience in this neighborhood taught me something different about what it means to be human, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger as she found her rhythm. "The musicians taught me that joy multiplies when it's shared. The dancers taught me that my body knows how to express emotions that my mind can't articulate. The feast showed me that abundance isn't about having more, but about sharing what we have with generosity and gratitude." As she spoke, Maya found herself remembering not just the events, but the internal shifts that had accompanied each new experience. She told the circle about the gradual loosening of the anxiety that had been her constant companion, about learning to sleep deeply again, about rediscovering her capacity for wonder and spontaneous laughter. "But the most important thing I learned," she said, her voice soft with the weight of the truth she was sharing, "is that healing doesn't happen in isolation. I spent years trying to fix myself through individual effort, thinking that if I could just work hard enough or be disciplined enough, I could think my way out of depression and anxiety. This community taught me that some kinds of healing require connection, require being witnessed and held by others who understand that we're all walking each other home." The most challenging part of her story came when Maya spoke about the fears that had kept her isolated for so long. The terror that if she let people see her real struggles, they would judge her as weak or broken. The belief that she had to have everything figured out before she could deserve love and support. "I was so afraid of being a burden," she admitted, tears flowing freely now. "I thought that asking for help was a sign of failure, that needing community meant I wasn't strong enough to handle life on my own. This neighborhood taught me that interdependence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognition that we're all connected, that my healing contributes to everyone's healing, that the gifts I offer to others somehow return to me transformed and multiplied. As Maya's story drew toward its conclusion, she spoke about the person she had become through her months on Harmony Lane. She told them about discovering gifts she didn't know she had. A talent for creating healing spaces, an ability to listen deeply to others' pain, a capacity for joy that felt both new and ancient. I used to think that healing meant returning to who I was before the depression and anxiety began, she said. But this community taught me that healing means becoming who I was always meant to be, integrating my struggles and my strengths into a whole person who can offer something unique to the world. The circle held Maya's story with the same profound attention and acceptance that had been offered to every other storyteller. Their silence creating a sacred container for her truth. When she finished speaking, the familiar rhythm of David's drum began. But tonight, it was joined by other instruments. Sarah's wooden recorder, Aliner's violin, instruments Maya didn't recognize played by neighbors whose gifts were still being discovered. The music that emerged was unlike anything Maya had heard in any of the other gatherings. It seemed to be composed specifically for her story, a musical reflection of her journey from isolation to connection, from fear to trust, from surviving to thriving. The melodies wove together themes she recognized from all her months in the community. The gentle peace of the meditation garden, the abundance of the feast, the sacred healing of the moon circles. As the music played, people began to share brief words of gratitude for what Maya had offered them through her story and her presence in the community. But more than that, they began to reflect her own gifts back to her, helping her see herself through their eyes and understand the ways her healing had contributed to the healing of the whole community. Thank you for showing us that it's possible to transform pain into wisdom, Aliner said, her voice warm with affection and pride. Thank you for becoming one of our midnight gardeners and teaching us new ways to create beauty, added David. Thank you for being brave enough to let us love you, said Sarah, her words touching something deep in Maya's heart. As the formal story sharing concluded and the gathering shifted into its more social phase, Maya found herself surrounded by people who wanted to share their own stories of transformation, their own gratitudes for the ways the community had healed and supported them. She realized that her story had given others permission to speak about their own journeys, had reminded everyone present that they were part of something larger than their individual struggles. The most meaningful conversation of the evening came when Harold approached her, his eyes bright with a recognition that spoke to their shared experience of finding healing through community connection. When I first saw you walking our street," he said, "I could see the same loneliness I had been carrying. Watching you bloom has reminded me that healing is always possible, that it's never too late to remember how to be joyful." As the fire died down and people began to make their way home through the moonlit garden, Maya felt a profound sense of completion and beginning. She had shared her story and been received with the same love and acceptance that the community offered to everyone who was brave enough to speak their truth. But more than that, she understood that her story was now part of the larger story of Harmony Lane, woven into the ongoing narrative of a community that had chosen to practice radical kindness as a way of life. Walking home through the familiar streets, Maya noticed that everything looked different somehow, as if sharing her story had allowed her to see the neighborhood with new eyes. The houses seemed to glow with the love of the families inside them. The gardens appeared more abundant and beautiful than ever. Even the streetlights seemed to cast their glow with extra warmth and welcome. As she prepared for bed, Maya realized that the anxiety and depression that had driven her to Harmony Lane had not simply been healed. They had been transformed. The sensitivity that had once made her vulnerable to overwhelm had become a gift for recognizing when others needed support. The deep thinking that had once trapped her in cycles of worry had become a capacity for reflection and insight that served the community's healing work. Most importantly, she understood that her healing was not a private accomplishment, but a gift she had received from a community that understood the sacred nature of witnessing and supporting each other's transformation. She had learned that the secret to healing was not individual strength, but collective care. Not isolation, but connection. Not independence, but the recognition that we are all walking each other home. Epilogue, the endless circle. 5 years have passed since Maya first walked down Harmony Lane in search of peace, and the neighborhood continues to evolve and grow in its capacity for creating healing and joy. New families have moved to the street, drawn by stories of the mysterious kindnesses and the quality of life that emerges when people choose to prioritize community care over individual achievement. Maya has become one of the neighborhood's wisdom keepers, someone who helps newcomers understand the unspoken traditions and practices that make Harmony Lane the sanctuary it is. She has learned to recognize the particular quality of exhaustion and disconnection that she once carried, and she has become skilled at offering the same gentle invitations to healing that Alina once offered her. The heart garden has expanded over the years, with new families contributing their backyards to the shared space and adding their own gifts to the ongoing creation of beauty and sanctuary. There are now meditation gardens from several different traditions, play areas designed by the neighborhood children themselves, and quiet corners dedicated to various forms of artistic expression and healing work. The traditions that Maya discovered during her first months on the street have grown and evolved while maintaining their essential spirit of spontaneous kindness and community care. The Midnight Gardeners now have a subtle communication system that allows them to coordinate their surprise transformations more effectively. The Saturday morning music gatherings have spawned smaller groups that meet throughout the week, creating opportunities for people with different schedules to participate in the joy of making music together. The harmony dancers have become locally famous, invited to perform at community events throughout the city, while always maintaining their primary commitment to celebrating the beauty and healing within their own neighborhood. The full moon healing circles now draw people from across the region, though they maintain their intimate quality by limiting participation to those who have been personally invited by current circle members. But perhaps the most significant development has been the spread of Harmony Lane's practices to other neighborhoods and communities. Maya has become part of a quiet network of people who are working to plant seeds of similar communities throughout the city, teaching others how to create spaces where healing happens through connection, where joy multiplies through sharing, where random acts of awesome become a way of life. The bench beneath the oak tree, where Maya first found rest, has become something of a shrine, visited by people from throughout the city who have heard stories about the healing that can be found on Harmony Lane. The small plaque that once invited weary travelers to rest has been joined by others, created by community members who want to ensure that anyone who needs sanctuary will know they are welcome. Maya often sits on that bench in the evenings, watching new neighbors discover the street's magic for the first time, seeing in their faces the same wonder and gratitude she felt during her first encounters with the community's radical kindness. She has learned that healing is not a destination, but a continuous process, that the peace she found on Harmony Lane was not something to be achieved once and then maintained, but something to be cultivated daily through small acts of care and connection. The anxiety and depression that brought her to the neighborhood occasionally return, but they no longer frighten her. She has learned to recognize them as temporary, whether patterns in the landscape of her emotional life, signals that she may need to reach out for support or adjust her balance between solitude and community. The difference is that she no longer faces these challenges alone. She is held by a web of relationships that provide both practical support and spiritual sustenance. Most evenings, as the sun sets over Harmony Lane and the streetlights begin their gentle glow, Maya can be found somewhere in the Heart Garden, tending plants in the Abundance Garden, participating in an impromptu dance session, sharing tea and conversation with neighbors who have become family. The peace she sought so desperately during those first lonely months has become not just a personal refuge, but a gift she helps create for others. The secret of Harmony Lane, Maya has learned, is not that it attracts special people or that it exists in some magical location protected from the world's difficulties. The secret is that it was created by ordinary people who made an extraordinary choice to prioritize love over fear, connection over isolation, healing over judgment, abundance over scarcity. Every night, as Maya prepares for sleep in her small house on the street that saved her life, she offers gratitude for the mysterious forces that guided her feet down an unfamiliar path on that first desperate evening. She gives thanks for Aliner's wise invitation into the secret garden, for the midnight gardeners who taught her that beauty could be created in darkness, for the musicians and dancers and storytellers who showed her that joy was her birthright. But mostly, she gives thanks for the understanding that healing is not a solitary journey, but a community practice. That the peace she sought was not something to be found, but something to be created day by day, act by act, heart by heart, in relationship with others who understand that we are all walking each other home. As sleep comes to Harmony Lane, as lights fade in windows, and the street settles into its peaceful rhythm, the magic continues. The heart garden breathes in the starlight. The meditation labyrinth holds space for tomorrow's seekers, and the bench beneath the oak tree waits patiently for the next weary traveler who needs to remember that they are not alone in the world. The story of Harmony Lane continues, written not in words, but in acts of kindness, not in grand gestures, but in daily choices to see each neighbor as family, each struggle as a call for community response, each small act of care as a thread in the infinite web of healing that connects all hearts that have learned to trust in love's endless capacity to transform pain into wisdom, isolation into connection, and despair into the deep peace that comes from knowing we belong to each other. In the quiet of the sleeping neighborhood, this peace radiates outward like ripples in a pond, touching other streets, other communities, other hearts that are ready to remember the ancient truth that healing happens when we choose to care for each other as carefully as we tend our most precious gardens. The peace of Harmony Lane becomes a gift to the world, a reminder that sanctuary is not a place we find, but a reality we create together, one random act of awesome at a time. And in this peace, all who seek rest may find it. All who seek healing may discover it. All who seek home may recognize that they have always belonged to the endless circle of love that holds all beings in its infinite embrace.